Today we find ourselves in Matthew chapter 22, and in this chapter, Jesus gets grilled with some ridiculous questions. I came across some questions that have been taken from actual court records. These are actual questions that attorneys have asked in a court of law. Some of them are absurd. All of them are pretty funny. One attorney questioning the defendant asked, "Now, doctor, isn't it true that when a person dies in their sleep, they don't know about it until the next morning?" Here's another one. "The youngest son, the 20-year-old, how old is he?" Here's a third. "Was it you or your younger brother who was killed in the war?" Here's a fourth. "Were you present when your picture was taken?" And sometimes it's not the question that's funny, but it's the answer. One more. So the attorney says, "All of your answers must be verbal. Where did you go to school?" The man said, "Verbal?" Okay, that's enough. Actual questions. Dumb questions asked by attorneys in court. Well, today in Matthew chapter 22, we're going to read some dumb questions. And starting in verse 15, the Bible tells us right up front, these were questions intended to trap Jesus in his words. And we're told that the Pharisees and the Herodians came together. That's a very strange partnership. The Herodians were loyal to Rome. They loved Rome. They were secular. The Pharisees were spiritual, and they hated the Romans. But one thing they had in common is they both wanted to get rid of Jesus. And so here's what they do. They ask Jesus a question trying to trick him. Here's the question. Tell us, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? The imperial tax was a hated tax. The Romans hated, the Jews hated the Romans, and they hated to pay taxes that would just support the occupying army. And so you can almost see the Pharisees and the Herodians giggling because they know they've got Jesus now. But in verse 18, Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax." And they brought him a denarius. Okay, I've got money. In my travels, I like to collect money. All of these coins are at least 2,000 years old. That's Greek. Alexander the Great, that's Greek, 336 BC. Let's see. Greek. Here we go. Now we're getting Roman. Constantine. These three are actual Roman denariuses. And on the front of these coins, you have the image of Caesar. These coins are actually 2,000 years old. On this coin, you have the Roman Emperor Domitian. Now, in Jesus' day, it would have been Tiberius. That would have been the Roman coin circulating. But Jesus said, let me see the coin. And so they brought him one of these. They brought him a denarius. And Jesus asked, "Whose image is this?" And he's holding the coin. And just as my coin has the image of Caesar, they replied, "Well, it's Caesar." So Jesus said, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's." And when they heard that, they were amazed. They thought they had a trick question. They thought that either, if he says yes or no, either way, they've got him. Because if Jesus said, yes, pay the tax, then the Jewish people would have deserted him because they hated the Romans. But if Jesus said, no, don't pay the tax, well, then the Romans would have arrested him for treason. But instead, I mean, he tricks them by saying, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. And that's still good advice today. The Bible tells us that we should obey our governing authorities. I'm a citizen of the United States of America, therefore I must obey the laws of this country. You always obey the laws of the land unless they contradict with the law of God, in which case we obey God. And I may be a citizen of this country, I may have a passport for the United States, but the Bible says, in Philippians chapter 3, I have a citizenship in heaven. So I'm not just a citizen of this country, I'm a citizen of heaven. And I need to give to God what belongs to God. My service, my love, my affection, my prayers. And so Jesus answered their question. And I'm running out of time, but if you read the rest of our passage, you're going to discover that the Sadducees try to get in on the fun. And in verse 23, the Sadducees come along and they come up with this ludicrous scenario. Verse 23 says, the Sadducees who don't believe in the resurrection, they come to Jesus and ask him a question about the resurrection. If a man is married and has no kids and he dies, and then his brother marries his wife, and then he dies, and then his brother marries the wife. Okay, the woman marries all 7 brothers. My goodness, that's a lot of weddings in one family with one wife to 7 different brothers. And then they ask, so Jesus, in the resurrection, whose husband will she be? Oh, another trick question. She'll go to heaven and there's 7 guys that she was married to. Which one will be her husband? And Jesus says, in heaven, we will neither marry nor be given in marriage. We'll be like the angels. We don't become angels, but like the angels in that angels do not have wedding ceremonies in heaven, and we're not going to be having wedding ceremonies in heaven either. And then he says in verse 31, concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what God said to you? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. God did not say, I was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He said this, by the way, to Moses at the burning bush. He said, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, meaning those 3 guys were in heaven. You see, Jesus brilliantly answers their question again. And I told you it's a chapter about questions. And so in verse 34, we have another question. And you'll have to wait till tomorrow. We'll answer the next question when you tune in tomorrow for Matthew chapter 22, verse 34.